Hello, welcome to Talkback's Monday podcast. Our main story today, that shocking incident at the Tyrone Ladies Senior Gaelic Football Final in Beara on Friday night. The pictures in this morning's Irish News are shocking. They're on the BBC News website online as well. Referee Simon Brady and Tyrone Women's Football Chairman Martin Conway lying out cold on the pitch after one was punched in the face, the other headbutted after the final whistle. The violence has been described as absolutely shameful. The PSNI says it's investigating a report of an assault. Tonight there's a full county board meeting to discuss what happened. Well, Simon and Martin were stretchered off to hospital after they were attacked, but I was able to speak to both of them on the programme today, starting with referee Simon Brady.
Wendy, my memory is very vague. In fact, it's non-existent of what happened after the game. All I can tell you is that I blew the whistle 30 seconds at the end of the game to give a 20-metre free kick to the St McCartney's team, who proceeded to score from that point. Before the free was given, it was a draw. It in turn happened to be the decisive score. I blew my whistle about 30 seconds later, went to make a few notes in my book, as I would normally do at the end of the game. Got a tap on my shoulder from a gentleman that I believe was looking to shake my hand. And Wendy, that's the last thing I remember about the particular incident.
And you woke up on the ground?
I woke up on the ground. It was a very cold, wet, windy night. I was shivering. And at that point when I come round, I was still very confused as to why I was there. And it took me a good half an hour, 45 minutes to get my bearings and then discover what had actually happened.
My goodness. So you were out cold?
Approximately 5 or 6 minutes, according to some people who were in attendance to me. Yes, it was about 5 or 6 minutes.
And I heard someone saying this morning that you're a fairly big fella. I mean, there must have been some force.
Well, I'm 6 foot. I'm probably the wrong side of 14 and a half stone. So, but he caught me fairly flush just between the cheekbone and the eye, and I believe it was a very heavy impact. A bit of swelling occurred, a bit of bruising, but other than that, Wendy, nothing else.
Well, we're glad to hear that you're okay after it. But Martin, what about you, Martin Conway? Just after that had happened to Simon, tell us then what happened to you.
Well, Wendy, I was there in the capacity of county board official, managing operations on the field, and as Simon described, I saw him being assaulted, and myself and another steward tried to restrain the guy that assaulted him. And then I got hit with a headbutt, which is the last thing I remember as well.
So, from your point of view, what happened next then?
Again, I like Simon, I awoke several minutes later on the ground, being attended by first aid. We were subsequently removed by stretcher to the changing rooms and transferred to Erin Hospital in Enniskillen.
And you needed oxygen, I hear. I did,
yeah. I was knocked out. Again, I think I was told 3 or 4 minutes. I was knocked out cold, and I suffered a broken nose and bruising to the cheek and eye as a result of injury.
Has anything like this ever happened to you before?
Never. And I've been playing and involved in sports for a long time, and this has never happened before. And I never witnessed what I saw prior to what happened to me. I never witnessed anything like that before.
Had you family members there with you, Martin?
No, thankfully there wasn't. Thankfully there was no one. There was no one there.
Right, but Simon, you hadn't you?
Yes, I asked my son Nathan to do match umpire for me, and he was in attendance. Now my son Nathan is 18, going on 19, and I suppose at that age not a lot shocks him, but to see his father being assaulted on the field in front of his own eyes and powerless to do anything about it. I felt for him, as I'm sure he felt for me at that particular moment in time. And he's still much affected by it. He's still...
It's the last thing you want to see, isn't it? Something like that happening to your dad when you can't help.
And then he obviously has to make a phone call to his mother, my wife, and inform her what has happened, and she's not anywhere close by. So she's unaware of what's happened in the situation and how I find myself. So it was pretty scary for him. It was scary for him to see his father in that position. Yeah.
I'm sure. So the two of you were taken off to the Erin Hospital. I mean, this was in Beara, so that's a fair wee distance away. I mean, but after this match, what sort of time did you manage to get back home and back to your families?
Well, I think Martin verified this. Martin's injuries were slightly more serious than mine. We both, I think we attended the hospital around the same time in separate ambulances. And I think I left about maybe shortly after 2 o'clock, and Martin was probably shortly after me, if that's correct. So it was a fairly long evening, and I have to thank, first of all, as well, the ambulance staff who did their job very well, the people who attended us on the field, and the staff there in hospital who attended as well. We thank them for their cooperation and their time.
Martin, you talked to us there about how you came round on the pitch and then had to be taken off and you had to be given oxygen and so on as well. Were you aware during any of that of what was still happening at the match? Because we're hearing that there was still a fair clamour, to put it mildly, and booing and so on taking place. Were you aware of all of that?
No, I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware of any of that. When I came around, I was aware of the voices and treatment I was getting. I wasn't even aware at the time that myself and Simon were in the same changing rooms being treated. So it was all fairly vacant in my mind at the time. I've heard reports. The whole incident. I don't want to let it take away from what was a sporting contest on the night as well.
It's very hard not to, though, isn't it? To have that kind of outcome at the end of it. It does rather detract from the contest that had taken place before.
Absolutely, and it's very disappointing and saddening to me to be talking about what happened after the match rather than what happened during the match.
Austin O'Callaghan is with me in the studio, our sports reporter. Austin, you've been listening to what Martin and Simon have to say, and this is just outrageous, isn't it?
Yeah, I've spoken to a couple of people today connected with ladies Gaelic football in Ulster. I've spoken to people connected with the GAA, and they've all said the same thing to me. Basically what they've said is you can't defend the indefensible. There's one important clarification I'd like to make at the outset, Wendy, if you don't mind, and this might sound bizarre to people who aren't connected with the GAA, but in terms of dealing with this incident and what's going to happen from here on in, Croke Park has no jurisdiction over what has happened at the weekend. Neither does the Ulster Council. The Ladies Gaelic Football Association, and Martin will probably back me up on this, is actually a separate entity as things stand to the GAA, and that might sound unusual. So in terms of looking after it, it is the ladies' committees and ladies' governing body which is going to have to deal with this, and I think it's completely out of the character of ladies Gaelic football. It's one of the aspects of Gaelic games which has had a growing profile in recent years, growing popularity, one of the real growing sports, and ironically Tyrone has been one of the counties at the forefront of it in terms of bringing it to the forefront and long term trying to integrate it into the wider GAA family. But there's no getting around or trying to excuse what happened on Friday night, and I haven't heard anybody try to do so. No.
It was a bit of a local needle match, was the way that I think you described it to me. These two teams have met on a number of occasions, yes, haven't they? St McCartans and Carrickmore.
Yeah, there'll be two of the well-known ladies Gaelic football teams in particular. There'll be a cluster of leading teams there, and they've met in finals before. St McCartans of Oher were going for 3 in a row, and I'm sure Carrickmore were determined to stop them. So there probably was a bit of passion, a bit of needle. There was a small bit of controversy regarding the cup these teams play for, the Jarlath Kerr Cup, named after a former Carrickmore club person. And allegedly the cup, when St McCartans won it a couple of years, was damaged, and that didn't go down well in Carrickmore country. That may or may not be the case, but there was a little bit of ill feeling, I know, in recent seasons going into this game, which probably added a little bit of spice into the mix as well.
But goodness, and of course we're not for a moment suggesting that any of the women on either of the teams was involved in any of this. This was somebody else.
Yeah, this was at the end. At the end of the match, there was a free awarded towards the end of the match, and look, we see it in different ways now and again rear its head. It happened in the men's Leinster football final last June in Croke Park, when Tyrone referee Martin Sludden awarded a goal which television pictures suggested shouldn't have stood, and we saw spectators coming onto the field surrounding the referee. Now fortunately Martin Sludden wasn't injured at the time, but he was shaken, and from time to time it happens.
Shouldn't though.
It shouldn't.
There's no way around that. Sure, there isn't.
There isn't, and no one is trying to make excuses for that. Yeah. All sport tempers rise. Fans think they're playing from time to time, and from time to time it strays over the line. The question is, how do we tackle it?
Yeah. I've got Lisa on the line, and Simon and Martin, stay with us, because apart from anything else, you might get a bit of illumination here as to the moments that you don't actually have any memory of, because Lisa O'Hare was at the match at the weekend. Lisa, what did you see?
Well, it was one of the most distressing incidents that I've ever seen at a Gaelic game. When I arrived onto the pitch, I just saw two men lying unconscious on the ground. I didn't know what had happened. But as I said, what I found the most distressing about the whole incident was that as the referee lay in some distress, it was obvious he was in trouble. As he lay unconscious on the ground, it continued to abuse him. People continued to verbally abuse him while he lay unconscious, and I just thought it was inhumane, and that was what distressed me most about the whole thing. And this abuse continued for up to half an hour. I mean, there was a long time before the ambulance came, and that he was stretchered onto an ambulance, and that this abuse continued well after the heat of the initial moment. And I agree with what Austin said, that sometimes these things happen and these elements spill onto the pitch. But what I couldn't believe was that even as tempers cooled down, that other people thought that this was acceptable when a man was in obvious medical distress.
How shocked were you by all of that?
I was really appalled, quite shaken. And I said, I mean, he looked in distress. We were worried for him. There were St. McCartan's girls actually down with him, trying to look after him. I think, again, I was there as a supporter of the St. McCartan's team, and I think they are absolutely devastated by what happened, because their name is being associated with this, and it was absolutely nothing to do with their club. They happened to be playing a game of football, which they won, but they were there on hand to look after the man, and there was absolutely nothing to do with their club. But they were all visibly shaken. There was tears, there was distress, and people just couldn't believe that this had happened.
And I'm guessing, Lisa, it's a Friday night, it's nearly the end of June, it's still pretty light. There must have been families there, children there, who must have been horrified by this.
Well, I had my own two little girls there, and I was just horrified. I had to, play it down to them that this, that there was an accident. I didn't state what had happened, but they were there. They saw the emotions. They saw what was going on. And as I said, clubs, it's very difficult to be responsible for an individual who does something as crazy as that. But when you see the abuse continue, to me it demonstrates that the problem is not isolated to one individual, it's widespread, that this kind of behaviour is acceptable. And what is worrying is that the referee could have been in real danger. I'm really glad to hear that he's okay, because we were worried for him, and I would be worried that sometime this is not going to have a happy ending, in the sense that a man's going to stand up and walk away from it. Sometime this is going to go too far, and someone's going to get seriously injured. And I would hope that this is addressed before something as devastating as that happens.
Indeed.
Lisa, can I ask you, you were a prominent ladies Gaelic footballer with Tyrone down through the years. Would it put you off what you saw on Friday night? Not just yourself in terms of your involvement at a local level, but also for your kids?
Well, I must say, at the time, in the heat of it, I did consider that and contemplate that, going, would I want my children to do this? But I think in the cold light of day, this is a sport, and when you look at it, the girls play for the love of the game, for the athleticism of it, for the passion of it, and that shouldn't be overshadowed by individuals. These were men, let's be honest. This has nothing to do with the ladies' game. These were two grown men who carried out this attack, and unfortunately, the ladies' game is tainted. When you see the front page of the Irish News, the word ladies final, that's what's very disappointing. These are girls who put an awful lot of work into their sport, who play at the highest level. And no, once you think about it, you think that that's what they do. But we all have to have a look at ourselves and a look at our clubs and our families, and to say what this game means. I think Rory McIlroy put it very well when he had his collapse in the Masters. He said, I just had a bad game of golf. And look what he was able to turn around and achieve when he had, when he looked at it in that light. This is not life or death, and it certainly shouldn't be. It's a game of sport, and I think all clubs should really have a look at how they take defeat, and that is something that they should learn and coach their children, as well as how to solo and kick a ball. That they should coach children from a very young age how to take defeat. And as I said, Rory McIlroy was an example to all of us about how to address your sport and to take it into your life.
Martin Conway still on the line, Lisa, and actually we have a lot of people ringing in and asking why we haven't got Barry McElduff on talking about this, because and apparently he's in the chamber at the Assembly at the moment, which is why we have tried to get him, and we will try and speak to him again later on. But Martin Conway, Lisa's right there, isn't she? I mean, this does call for a serious look at this. I mean, the kind of example that was set on Friday night to youngsters like her daughters, and the images that Nathan, Simon's son, saw as well. That's absolutely not what you want from a sport. Sure, it's not.
Absolutely, Wendy. I mean, I agree totally with what Lisa said. I am also development officer with the Tyrone County Board. I'm responsible for the development of underage players and development of coaches and referees. And I mean, that is not the image that we want to portray. But it's also important to say that that is not reflective of ladies Gaelic football in Tyrone or throughout Ireland.
I know, but the problem is that it's what we're talking about today. Nobody's talking about the match, no matter how well either side played. We're talking about the violence at the end of it.
Yes, and that's there's no excuse for that violence. And it's part of an investigation, and it will be looked at, and the people who carried out these attacks will be dealt with within the disciplinary process of the Ladies Association.
They may well, one would have thought, end up being dealt with elsewhere too.
Well, that's all part of the process and investigation. We'll see what way that develops.
Yeah. I've got Alan Snoddy on the line as well, who of course referees in another sport altogether, and I'll come to him in just a second, but I wanted to ask Simon before that. You heard Lisa Simon saying how horrified she was by the fact that the abuse continued even until you were being carried into the ambulance. Were you aware of all of that?
I was made aware later on that evening that certain individuals hadn't, I suppose in country terms, settled the head in terms of what had happened. So to me, they've shown no remorse, and I'm sure 48 hours after the event, they probably still haven't shown any remorse in regards to that. Can I make just one other point as well? In that particular evening, Wendy, the Ladies County Board had invited the Special Olympics squad along to participate in a little game at half-time in very wet and atrocious conditions. Now, those people probably seen the start of the match and may have seen the end of that match as well. We want to encourage people in the GAA to attend the game at all levels, regardless of who you are, your abilities or disabilities they may be. And they may have witnessed that attack at the end of the game. And I feel sorry for those individuals and their parents who were there to enjoy the occasion themselves. And I must admit they didn't enjoy themselves in half-time. And I feel sorry and I apologise to those people for what had happened, because it does not encourage anybody of any persuasion or of any disability or whatever to take up our game.
No.
That's one of the most disappointing aspects of the evening for me.
I've got a lot of texts coming in about this, and one says on the ladies' football match, I have 2 young daughters playing under 10 ladies football in Tyrone. I played senior men's football also for many years in Tyrone, and disgusted by events to the extent that I will no longer allow my children to attend what's turned into a cancer in both men and ladies football. It's a disgrace. Somebody else says there's absolutely no excuse for violence in GAA. These people are volunteers. There does, however, have to be a mechanism put in place whereby extra time is clearly identified by the referee and his decisions are made accountable during the game, like in rugby with TV referees, and that's from Mark in Beara. Somebody else is saying refs bring it on themselves. Why don't they referee fairly? So, and Austin has his head in his hands at this stage, listening to that,
I mean, look, I don't have the guts to be a referee, so it's easy for me to talk, and I am in constant awe of people who put a whistle in the mouth, and because it is it is arguably one of the toughest sports at any level, toughest jobs at any level of sport. And I take my hat off to people like Simon Brady, Martin Sludden, etc., who put themselves up there, because in the modern game they're in a hapless situation in terms of how they can keep on top of 30 men and women playing on a field. But I think I find that comment infuriating. That the referee have to take responsibility. I think they could be helped a bit better from time to time by the associations in terms of the tools and facilities available at their disposal to help them make their decisions. But it's a time-old argument that the referee gets it wrong. The referee is part of the game. He's a human being, not an object, not a plank of wood that people can just hurl insults at. And anyway, sorry, I'm getting annoyed here.
Austin's correct, Wendy, from the point of view. We often hear in soccer and rugby about decisions made in real time. That was a decision made in real time in very poor conditions, and I will stand over any decision like any referee. And we have to make those decisions, whether it's the first minute of the game or the last minute of the game. We have to make the call for that.
So you stand over your decision on this, Simon?
Every decision that I made in that field, I know it's the correct decision, and as far as I can aware, it's been reviewed, the game, apparently, and the decision was the correct decision. But from a refereeing point of view, I want to make it absolutely clear, that in itself would discourage anybody, men or ladies, taking up refereeing in the GAA, and I can understand why. The reason why I do it is I want to help the ladies' game as well as the men's game by attending those games, making decisions on their behalf. I instruct them during the course of the match why I give my decision. I see it as a coaching role to a certain extent. I want to help to develop them as footballers and enjoy the game of football. But I still have to apply the rules fairly across the board. Now, I hope to continue in my role as a referee, and I give it a lot of thought and consideration. The best thing for me to do is to go back out on the field in the coming weeks and the coming evenings and attend ladies' football matches. And I have been given an appointment, and I will attend that appointment, and I hope people will come out and continue to watch, especially the young people who are impressionable, and take this particular event on Friday night and use it to the advantage of the GAA and say to them, forget about the thugs on the side of the field. It is about the players. It's about the ladies who attended that night. It's about the backroom staff. It's about the supporters, the true supporters of the game. Because I am annoyed now at this stage that the club involved are going to get penalised. And we are trying to encourage football in this county. We're trying to develop it. And this will only set it back a slight bit, but we will, as a county, take it forward. And I feel sorry for the girls involved. I wish there was a better outcome for the evening. But we will move forward from this. And the club hopefully will move themselves forward. And I hope the club's interest and the interest of those girls are looked after in the aftermath of this event. But I will continue to referee on ladies' football to the best of my ability, and I will work with the girls and support the girls in every way we can.
There'll be a number of people thinking you're a brave man. Simon, I've got a lot of comments coming in on this. Frank has called in about it, and he says, what annoys me is that all those at the game know who perpetrated what happened. There's a general meeting tonight to investigate the matter. There's no investigation needed, he says. The dogs in the street would know who did it. They just need to say who did it, take them to court and see what happens. Name and shame. Would you be in favour of that, Martin Conway?
I would, but I also have to promote that the process takes place. There is a process, and there's a process there, and we have to follow it. These people involved in this have no place in the GAA, have no place in the Ladies Gaelic Football Association. They have no place in sport, and they don't deserve to be part of the sport. In the future.
I mean, there are others texting. Gordon says it sounds like a serious assault. Are the PSNI looking into this? And I mean, the answer to that, as I understand it, is that yes, they are.
Well, I understand that the PSNI are investigating the assaults.
I mean, as the two people who bore the brunt of these attacks, I mean, would you like to press charges on this?
Well, that remains to be seen. That's going to be part of the investigation, the wider investigation, and the decision will be reached on that at a later date.
I have a couple of other people on the line about this. Martin McCarran, who I think, Martin, you're Simon's uncle. Thanks for calling in. Hello.
Okay, Wendy. Yes, I'm here.
Hello there. So you've maybe heard a bit of what Simon's had to say. He insists that he's going to go back out to refereeing again, despite the fact that this was all pretty shocking for him, for his family, for his son who was there on Friday night.
Well, it must have been a terrible experience for poor Simon, but Simon's a very brave young man, and he loves his refereeing, and he's quite experienced, and he has refereed hundreds of matches. But and he suffered terribly, but he'll get over it because that's the type of But I'm very angry at Austin O'Callaghan's comments. Austin O'Callaghan said, "Oh, this is a ladies' GAA affair." Yes, it is. But it happened on the Tyrone GAA premises. That Barra ground is affiliated to the Tyrone GAA, who in turn are affiliated to the GAA down in Croke Park. So then the women probably rent the ground, or there's some sort of an agreement. But already Austin seems to be, sweeping under the carpet. Oh, it dealt with the ladies.
Martin, I'm not. I can assure you, it is. I agree with you. That was just simply a point of clarification before people go racing off to Croke Park.
What had to do with the injury? If it was a point of clarification, surely if the wider GAA family are all responsible. You seem to be sidelining it. Oh, this is a women's issue.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that in case people are wondering what is Croke Park going to do about this? What is the Ulster Council going to do about that? The Ulster Council and Croke Park, and this might sound bizarre to you, they have as much jurisdiction on this issue as Jim Boyce, the FIFA Vice President, has. That might be right or wrong. The GAA families are working to become one unit, an integrated family. Ladies GAA, there are great plans afoot to make a part of the YGA family. I'm just purely in terms of due process. It actually happens. Ladies Gaelic football is a separate sporting entity. That's all I'm saying. I'm not sweeping it under the counter.
I think if I could say so, I think Austin was trying to explain the nuts and bolts of all of this to those listeners who don't understand, who don't know that.
But why, Wendy, at this stage, when it happened on a GAA ground?
So are you saying then, Martin, that because it happened on a GAA ground, that you believe that they should have some kind of role in this?
Absolutely. For example, if there was an assault in a hotel, and somebody has that hotel rented, I mean, it goes back to the owners and all that sort of thing. I mean, the ground, I don't know. I know what Austin's saying, the legalities, but the ground is basically obviously there's some mechanism whereby the ladies play their GAA championship footballs on the Barra football pitch or whatever ground. The GAA have a say in that ground, it's affiliated, there's insurances and all sorts of things. And you can't say, oh, this is just a ladies' problem.
Well, he didn't say it was just a ladies' problem.
If I did that impression, I apologise.
I didn't get that impression, Martin. I mean, Austin was explaining just the fact that
the relevance of it, Wendy. Why he went into all this explanation of why it was sidelining the who. And secondly, there seems to be a lot of abuse to those two poor men who were sticking on the ground. Where was the Barra club officials to clear that ground immediately? I'm a GAA man myself here in my own parish. We would immediately clear the ground. That young girl was on, said it was very distressing, the scene.
But Martin, would you not accept that nobody would have been expecting a free-for-all at a ladies' Gaelic football match? It's not going to be policed or stewarded to the same extent that maybe an All-Ireland final or an Irish Cup final in soccer. I mean, nobody was expecting there would be that sort of incident at a match like that.
Well, it seems that only there was about two thugs, from what I can hear, two thugs who were doing the abusing and doing the fighting, and I'm sure there was enough decent-minded people there to overpower them or whatever. But it seemed to be almost like a mob type of thing, and if that's what they call ladies' football, excuse me, I mean, it's...
Well, we weren't there, I suppose, is the way to put this. But I'm guessing that you've got the referee and another official laid out flat in the pitch.
Correct.
I'm guessing that probably most of the effort was going in to helping them and trying to make sure that they were okay and get them off to the changing room, which from what we hear was indeed the case. I mean, it's hard. Neither Simon nor Martin has much recollection of what went on at that stage, but Lisa did certainly say that was what happened. They were taken off and then moved away in an ambulance. But could I just ask you one question on this, Martin? I mean, you're obviously exercised about it all. Would it make a difference? I mean, what difference do you think it would make if there was more overall control of the two games? If the ladies' game came under Croke Park or whatever is the current intention?
Well, to me, it makes sense that it has to, because they played in GAA grounds. It was different if the ladies had their own GAA pitches and owned them and used them for their own reasons. These are the GAA pitches that were built in each parish by men and women and collected and paid for and done, and on all committees you have men and women. So I find the difference between men and women doesn't really make much difference, because there's as many women now in committees and doing jobs at football matches as there are men. So this distinction between ladies only and men, to me, is a bit of a laugh.
Yeah, you're right.
It happened on a GAA pitch. End of the story. The GAA have to deal with it as a whole body, women and men. Not as Austin
Can I just answer you there? And I believe Austin was only clarifying the structures that exist between the GAA, so-called men's GAA, and the Ladies Gaelic Football Association. Now, in Tyrone, we are two separate organisations, two separate associations, but we work very, very closely together.
Using the same facilities.
In Tyrone, we work as a GAA family. We operate. We work very closely with the Tyrone County GAA board.
So Martin Conway, I mean, would it then strike you that actually, if this works as the GAA family, that it should be dealt with by the GAA family rather than just by one element of it?
Well, the GAA do not have jurisdiction over it, and the Ladies Gaelic Football Association in Tyrone and in Ulster and nationally have jurisdiction over it, and the process is there.
Which is exactly what Austin explained at the beginning. There are a lot of texts coming in about this. Doris in Dungannon says, Lisa is right, there should be no place for that attack in the game. No matter what is happening, if you're losing or winning, the referee has to make the decisions to the best of his ability. There are thugs in other games to spoil it for all the decent people. Martin, another Martin saying, I'm surprised no one's saying there should be prosecutions. These thugs should be jailed as well as banned from matches for life. Someone else, and I don't know who would like to take this on, says nobody seems to realise that the violence stems from events that happen on the pitch at GAA games. I saw the Tyrone Donegal game on TV, and some of the tackles, says Ron, would be regarded as common assault if they happened on the street. Is that not...
Wendy, from a refereeing point of view...
That's Simon now, isn't it?
Yes, Simon speaking. From a refereeing point of view, about various tackles on the field and all the rest of it and what it leads to. I can only talk about this particular game that went on Friday night because of the events that happened afterwards. When you're a referee on the field, you normally get a vibe during the course of the game, certainly from the respective management teams, that how well you may be refereeing the game and how well it's going. Now, at various stages in that game, I stopped the play for various injuries because that's what I do to the ladies. Everybody deserves their due attention and the result of an injury. Health and safety is very important at all times. Certainly in my book, it's health and safety is very important at all times. The only time that the managers ever spoke to me was to ask me about the time that I stopped the clock for. Now, normal games that would come over and remonstrate with you about a decision, about this, that and the other, that didn't happen. So I thought the game itself was going very well. There was no tackles of any description that rendered to management and players thinking that the game was of a rough nature and all the rest of it. Now, that's my understanding. Somebody may like to verify that and differ that opinion. So that game that night went very well. The crux of the matter was my last decision, the last minute of the game. The game, that person who's obviously texting either plays GAA or doesn't play GAA. It's not, he doesn't know the rules of the game probably, and that's no fault of his, and doesn't know how the game's played and the certain tackles that are allowed. But that game on Friday night was not a violent game. That was a very sporting game. The correct decisions were made. I was satisfied with the decisions made. There was no violence during the course of the game or the normal yellow cards that I had given during the course of the game. So that didn't in itself bring on the violence after the game because there was none of it during the game.
Right. That's nice and clear. Thanks very much. We've mentioned Barry McElduff, who of course is a local MLA there. A number of texts saying things like, let's hear what Barry has to say if this was Irish League football. Powers that be would be bouncing off the rafters, and the powers that be, or the power that be's, is on the line right now. Afternoon to you, Barry.
Hi, good afternoon, Wendy.
Well, this is all pretty shocking stuff, isn't it? We've been hearing from both Martin Conway and Simon Brady laid out flat on the pitch.
Aye, and I do absolutely wish Martin and Simon a speedy and full recovery. Both gentlemen make a brilliant contribution till Common Luhla Scale in County Tyrone. They're volunteers, they give of their time, and they're very much respected individuals inside the community and the association. So I do wish both gentlemen well after their terrible experience on Friday night.
I've had a lot of people texting in asking, surely this is something that ought to be dealt with by the police. It's a common assault, or allegedly a common assault, I suppose we ought to say. Many people are saying. Is that the right way to deal with this?
Well, I suppose that's down to the individual complainant too, Wendy, in a way. I do know that the GAA and the Ladies GAA sometimes there's a level of separation there in terms of administration. I think that has been understood. But they do have disciplinary procedures which obviously kick in straight away. And I did speak to local club officials this morning, and they assured me that if any investigation is initiated, that certainly they would give their full cooperation to it.
I mean, it's the kind of thing, as Keelan has texted me, saying, if you hit someone in the street, you'd be arrested. But you hit someone at a match and nothing happens.
Well, sport is a great unifier, but I do think that violence...
Didn't work very well on Friday night.
No, it didn't, Wendy. You're absolutely right, but I'm not on the defensive on this one, because I would share the views of many people who have been speaking through your programme, as I understand it. I'm in Stormont today here on other engagements. That's why I haven't heard the full programme. I wish I had, to tell you the truth. But violence associated with sport is absolutely wrong. It isn't acceptable, and it doesn't have any place in the GAA. That's my strong opinion. There's one personal opinion that I have, Wendy, and I believe that sports can learn from each other. I personally, this is only a personal opinion, would like to see a level of respect introduced for referees in the GAA, which is akin to rugby, where, for example, in rugby, and I know we're not talking about players interfering with the referee or anything like that on Friday evening, but a level of respect that is shown in rugby, I think, should read across to other sports, where, for example, only the captain, as I understand it in rugby, speaks to the referee. True. It's that kind of arrangement.
Interesting you raise that, because I've got Alan Snoddy on the phone. He's been hanging on for ages, actually. And Alan, that's something you referee. Football is your game, of course. Over the years, there's been a lot of discussion about trying to get the rugby level of respect, if I could put it like that, for soccer referees as well, because you can be a bit isolated out there in the middle of the park, can't you?
Yes, Wendy. Well, refereeing can't be a lonely game, and I think what I would like to do first of all is to wish Simon and Martin a full and speedy recovery from what has obviously been a fairly horrendous experience. And I also think that Nathan, Simon's son, shouldn't be forgotten in all of this either, because whilst he wasn't physically assaulted, I'm sure mentally he's got a very nasty taste left from Friday evening, and I was absolutely very, very encouraged by Simon when he said that he wanted to get back onto the field and get back out there again. And from my point of view, that would certainly be the advice that we would give any of our football referees. And I think he's shown marvellous character and marvellous courage to do that, and I would commend him on that.
Right. So when you look at things like what Barry McElduff's suggesting, the same as in rugby, where you just have one person who deals with it. I mean, I know this is very removed from what actually happened on Friday night, but there does need to be more respect for referees, doesn't there? And particularly in something like either men's or women's Gaelic football, where these people aren't paid. It's very much a kind of volunteer-driven sport, and you're not going to get many people volunteering if they think that something like this is going to happen to them.
Well, exactly, and I think it's not just men's and women's Gaelic football. I think it's grassroots sport all over the country, because no sport can survive in Northern Ireland without the volunteers, and certainly refereeing is no different from that. I mean, football refereeing here in Northern Ireland up to a few years ago survived purely on 95% of volunteers, and Martin in particular probably on Friday evening had put an enormous amount of work into what turned out to be a disastrous evening for sport. Not necessarily ladies Gaelic football, because this was a family occasion attended by I'm sure full families, and the two folks that have tarnished the sport or the game perhaps are parents themselves, and I mean they need to examine their own consciousness.
Barry McElduff, just a question for you. You are the one who suggested this business of more respect for the ref and so on. You're the guy who's up there at Stormont who could maybe drive this forward. Are you going to do that?
Well, I have every confidence in the GAA to administer best in these matters. I genuinely do, Wendy, because I know them at Ulster provincial level. I know them at Tyrone county level. I know them at club level. I mean, the two clubs involved here are two of the foremost GAA clubs in ladies football in Tyrone, Carrickmore and St McCartans. So I have every confidence that lessons will be learned from this, I hope, and that they would put in train. Over the weekend at Clonus, I did speak to county officials, and they were of the same mind, about moving forward. These are issues of the game that need to be improved.
I'm getting lots of texts and tweets in as well saying, has this incident not been reported? It's going to be swept under the carpet by the authorities. What's needed is for charges to be brought. I mean, is that a worry that you have, that it might just all kind of peter out?
And that's addressed to me, Wendy?
It is, yeah.
Okay, no problem. I don't think it will be. I think it's far too serious. I mean, the voluntary contribution of officials and referees is definitely demands and merits a full and thorough response to this. There's no doubt about that. I'm a proud GAA man today. I was a proud GAA man on Friday night. I know the referees and officials are the same, and the reputation of the association is really precious, and you want to instill confidence in people to be part of the association. Ladies football is the fastest growing sport, as I understand it, in the island of Ireland at this time, and we do have some first-class clubs and counties involved in all of this.
That being the case, Martin Conway, and you're very much involved in this, I've got a comment in from Brian who's saying that he's been thinking about Neil Lennon, who was attacked. He was immediately arrested by the police, the thug who attacked him. He'd be charged, banned for life, and he says it's the responsibility of the GAA to find out who these guys were, GAA, or the ladies' game as it seems to be, find out who they were, report them to the police, have them charged with assault and get them banned for life. Use the CCTV footage. He says it's nothing to do with an internal investigation. And there'll be many people listening, Martin Conway, who'll be thinking to themselves, if you really want to tackle this, you've got to go in hard at this stage and just stop it.
Well, the Tyrone Ladies Gaelic Football Association's disciplinary process has already kicked into action. The investigation will probably start tonight after the county board meeting, the full investigation. And whatever that leads to, I can't be involved in the investigation because I was involved in the incident. And we'll wait and see what the results of the investigation are, and things will move forward from there.
Mm-hmm.
Wendy, just the last thing I want to say on it, the clear sense I get from the GAA administrators and officials I've spoken to, they don't want to brush it under the carpet. They want to tackle this. I get the impression they want to send out a clear and decisive signal. Gaelic Games has so many great strengths, from community aspect to being able to fill a stadium like Croke Park, 82,000 people, and there's no crowd segregation. It's never been an issue. The danger is if things like this keep cropping up, maybe longer term, they might have to look at that again, and that would be an awful thing to happen for an association, a powerful sports body like the GAA.
That was Monday's Talkback podcast. Have another one for you tomorrow, of course. You can get in touch meanwhile on the comment line 90338 You can email talk.back@bbc.co.uk. If you've got a story, why not follow us on Twitter, Wendy Talks Back.